The rain had stopped, but Central Park's pathways still glistened with puddles that reflected the gray afternoon sky. Most people hurried past, umbrellas tucked under arms, eager to reach their destinations. But on a weathered wooden bench near the playground, a man sat motionless, staring at nothing in particular. His clothes hung loose on his thin frame, a faded army jacket that had seen better years, worn sneakers with holes near the toes. His beard was unkempt, streaked with gray, and his eyes held the distant look of someone who had learned not to expect much from the world. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed. Because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Marcus Chen had been living on the streets for 8 months now. The transition from software engineer to homeless veteran hadn't happened overnight. It started with the layoffs at the tech startup where he'd worked for 3 years. Then came the mounting medical bills from his father's cancer treatment. The apartment went next, followed by his car, and finally his dignity. Now, at 34, he spent his days moving between park benches and subway stations, invisible to most of the city that bustled around him. The bench where he sat had become his regular spot. It was positioned just far enough from the main walking path that security guards didn't bother him, but close enough to the playground that he could watch families together, remembering what normalcy looked like. Today, hunger gnawed at his stomach with particular intensity. He hadn't eaten in 2 days, surviving only on water from public fountains and the occasional coffee shop that let him use their restroom. Across the playground, a small figure caught his attention. A girl, maybe 6 or 7 years old, with dark curls escaping from a bright yellow raincoat. She was carefully unwrapping what looked like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, her small hands working methodically at the plastic wrap. Beside her stood a woman in an expensive navy coat, speaking rapidly into a phone while checking her watch repeatedly. The little girl took a bite of her sandwich, then paused, her gaze wandering across the park until it landed on Marcus. Their eyes met for a moment, and instead of looking away like most people did, she tilted her head with curiosity. Marcus offered a small, tired smile and turned his attention back to the pigeons pecking at crumbs near his feet. What he didn't notice was that the little girl had stood up and was walking in his direction, her sandwich clutched in both hands. The woman on the phone, engrossed in her conversation, didn't see her charge moving away from the playground. "Excuse me," came a small voice beside him. Marcus looked up to find the girl standing just a few feet away, her dark eyes serious and kind. Up close, he could see she was beautifully dressed in clothes that probably cost more than he used to spend on groceries in a month. Her shoes were pristine white sneakers, her jeans had designer stitching, and even her raincoat looked like it came from an upscale children's boutique. "Hi there," Marcus said gently, his voice hoarse from disuse. Without a word, the girl carefully tore her sandwich in half. The peanut butter stretched between the pieces before breaking, and she held out the larger portion to him. "You look hungry," she said simply. "My nanny packed me 2 sandwiches, but I can only eat 1. Marcus stared at the offered food, his throat tightening. "That's very kind of you, sweetheart, but I couldn't take your lunch." The girl shook her head firmly. "Mama always says sharing is caring, and you look like you need caring about." The innocence and matter-of-fact way she said it nearly broke him. Marcus looked around, expecting to see a parent rushing over to pull their child away from the homeless man, but the woman in the navy coat was still absorbed in her phone call, pacing near the swings. "What's your name?" Marcus asked. "Emma Rose," she replied, still holding out the sandwich. "What's yours?" "Marcus." "Nice to meet you, Marcus. Will you please take it?" "It's strawberry jelly, the good kind." The genuine concern in her voice overwhelmed him. Marcus accepted the sandwich with shaking hands. "Thank you, Emma Rose. This is the kindest thing anyone has done for me in a very long time." Emma smiled, a gap-toothed grin that lit up her entire face. "My daddy says kindness is like magic. It makes everything better." As Marcus took his first bite, savoring the simple sweetness of peanut butter and jelly, Emma settled onto the bench beside him, swinging her legs and eating her half of the sandwich. For a few minutes they sat in comfortable silence, an unlikely pair sharing a meal in the middle of Manhattan. "Do you live in the park?" Emma asked eventually, her question asked with the straightforward curiosity only children possess. "Sometimes," Marcus answered honestly. He had learned that children often understood truth better than adults did. "That must be cold," she said thoughtfully. "Don't you have a house?" Not right now, but this bench isn't so bad. It has a good view of the playground. Emma considered this seriously. When I'm sad, Daddy says to look for something beautiful. Do you see beautiful things here? Marcus glanced around the park, seeing it through her eyes. I see families laughing. I see dogs playing. And today, I met a very kind little girl who shared her sandwich with me. That's pretty beautiful. Emma beamed. See? Magic. From across the playground came a sharp voice. Emma. Emma Rose, where are you? The woman in the navy coat had finally looked up from her phone call and noticed her missing charge. She was scanning the playground frantically, her voice rising with panic. That's Ms. Patricia, Emma said, recognizing the voice. She's my nanny. I should go back. But as Emma started to stand, the woman spotted them. Patricia's expression shifted from relief to horror as she took in the scene. Her precious charge sitting next to a homeless man on a park bench, both of them eating sandwiches. Emma Rose! Patricia's voice was sharp as she hurried toward them, her expensive heels clicking against the wet pavement. Get away from there this instant! Emma looked confused. But Miss Patricia, this is my friend Marcus. He was hungry, so I shared my sandwich like Mama taught me. Patricia reached them and immediately grabbed Emma's arm, pulling her away from the bench. You do not talk to strangers, especially not people like that. Her voice dripped with disgust as she looked at Marcus. And you? She turned to him, her eyes blazing. How dare you take food from a child? Have you no shame? Marcus stood up slowly, the half-eaten sandwich still in his hands. She offered it. I tried to say no, but she insisted. I'm sure you did, Patricia said sarcastically, preying on the kindness of children. It's despicable. She pulled out her phone. I should call the police. Please don't, Marcus said quietly. I wasn't bothering anyone. I'll leave. But Emma tugged on Patricia's coat. Ms. Patricia, you're being mean. Marcus is nice. He said sharing was beautiful. Children don't understand the world like adults do. Patricia snapped, then looked back at Marcus with contempt. If I see you near this playground again, I will call security. Stay away from decent people. As Patricia led Emma away, the little girl looked back over her shoulder and waved at Marcus. Bye, Marcus. I hope you find somewhere warm tonight. Patricia yanked her arm. Don't encourage him, Emma. People like that choose to live that way. Marcus watched them go, Emma's yellow raincoat a bright spot against the gray afternoon until they disappeared from view. He sat back down on the bench, the remaining sandwich suddenly tasting like ash in his mouth. Patricia's words echoed in his head, joining the chorus of shame and self-doubt that had been his constant companion for months. What he didn't know was that 20 feet away, hidden behind a cluster of oak trees, someone else had witnessed the entire exchange. Someone who had been taking his daily walk through the park, as he did every afternoon when the stress of running a Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. Billion-dollar company became too much. Someone who had seen the genuine kindness of a child and the cruel response of the adult meant to guide her. David Kim had built his tech empire from nothing, starting with a simple app developed in his Stanford dorm room that eventually became the foundation for one of the world's largest cloud computing companies. At 42, he was worth more money than most people could comprehend, but he still remembered what it felt like to eat ramen noodles for weeks on end, to choose between buying textbooks or groceries, to feel invisible and forgotten. He had been taking his usual route through the park, his security detail trailing at a discreet distance, when he noticed the interaction on the bench. Initially, he had planned to keep walking. His schedule was packed with back-to-back meetings, and his assistant had already called twice to remind him about the board presentation he needed to prepare. But something about the scene had made him pause. Maybe it was the way the little girl had approached the homeless man without fear, or the gentle way the man had spoken to her despite his obvious desperation. David had found himself stepping behind the trees, not wanting to interrupt but curious about what would unfold. When the nanny arrived and began berating the homeless man, David felt his jaw clench. He recognized the type, someone who had probably never missed a meal in their life, judging someone whose circumstances they couldn't begin to understand. The casual cruelty in her voice, the way she spoke about people like that, as if they were somehow less human, stirred something deep in David's chest. As the nanny dragged the protesting child away, David made a decision that would change everything. Part 2. Marcus remained on the bench long after Emma and Patricia had left, staring at the half-eaten sandwich in his lap. The encounter had left him feeling more alone than ever. For a few minutes sitting with Emma, he had remembered what it felt like to be seen as human rather than an obstacle to be avoided. But Patricia's words had quickly reminded him of his place in the world's hierarchy. The afternoon was growing colder, and the park was emptying as people headed home to warm dinners and comfortable beds. Marcus knew he should start looking for somewhere to spend the night. The shelter was probably full again, and the subway tunnels would be crowded with others like him, all seeking refuge from the elements. He was about to stand when he noticed someone approaching. A man in an expensive gray coat, walking with purpose directly toward his bench. Marcus's first instinct was to leave. Experience had taught him that well-dressed people approaching homeless individuals rarely brought good news. But there was something different about this man's demeanor. He wasn't walking with the aggressive stance of someone coming to chase him away, nor the nervous hurry of someone avoiding eye contact. Instead, he moved with quiet confidence, his expression thoughtful rather than hostile. "Excuse me," the man said as he reached the bench. "I'm David. I was wondering if I could sit with you for a moment." Marcus looked up, surprised. The man was Asian, probably in his early 40s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. His clothes were clearly expensive but understated, the kind of quality that whispered rather than shouted wealth. "It's a public bench," Marcus replied cautiously. David sat down, leaving a comfortable space between them. For a moment, neither man spoke. David seemed to be considering his words carefully. "I saw what happened with the little girl and her nanny," David said finally. "I wanted to tell you that what that woman said was wrong." Marcus glanced at him sideways. "You don't even know me." "I know enough," David replied. "I saw how gentle you were with the child, how you tried to refuse her offer. I saw kindness, not predation. Her nanny didn't see it that way. Her nanny is a narrow-minded fool who judges people by their appearance rather than their character." David's voice carried quiet anger. "That little girl showed more wisdom in 5 minutes than that woman has in her entire life." Marcus found himself studying this stranger who had stopped to defend him. "Why do you care?" David was quiet for a long moment, watching the last few joggers make their way along the park paths. "Because I've been hungry before. Not like you are now, but hungry enough to know what it feels like when someone offers you kindness and you're too proud or too afraid to take it. You don't look like you've ever missed many meals." A small smile crossed David's face. "Appearances can be deceiving. I grew up in a one-bedroom apartment in Queens with my mother and grandmother. My father left when I was 8. There were times when dinner was whatever the food bank was giving away that week." Marcus felt something shift in his chest. What changed? Education, hard work, and luck, if I'm being honest. A lot of luck. David turned to face Marcus more directly. "What's your story?" For reasons he couldn't explain, Marcus found himself talking. Maybe it was the genuine interest in David's voice, or maybe it was just the relief of having someone ask who actually seemed to want to know the answer. He told David about his military service, his struggles with PTSD, the job at the startup that had seemed like a new beginning. He talked about his father's illness, the mounting bills, the cascade of losses that had led him to this bench. David listened without interruption, his expression growing more serious as the story unfolded. When Marcus finished, they sat in silence again, the weight of shared understanding settling between them. "What did you do in the military?" David asked eventually. "Army. IT specialist. I was good with computers, networks, security systems. That's how I got the job at the startup afterward." "And you're good with people too," David observed. "I watched how you talked to that little girl. Natural, respectful, but not condescending. That's rarer than you might think." Marcus shrugged. "Kids are easy. They don't see what everyone else sees when they look at me." Maybe they see what everyone else should see. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. David stood up, reaching into his coat pocket. He pulled out a business card and handed it to Marcus. "I run a tech company," David said simply. "We're always looking for good people, especially those with your background. If you're interested, call this number tomorrow and ask for Jennifer. Tell her David Kim sent you." Marcus stared at the card. The company name meant nothing to him, but the quality of the cardstock and the elegant typography suggested success. "I don't understand. You don't know anything about my qualifications, my work history, whether I can even be trusted. I know you refused food from a hungry child until she insisted. I know you treated her with respect and kindness when you had every reason to be bitter and angry at the world. I know you served your country and took care of your father, even when it cost you everything." David met his eyes steadily. "That tells me everything I need to know about your character. Skills can be taught or refreshed. Character can't be. But I'm," Marcus gestured to his appearance, his situation, "temporarily down on your luck." David finished. "It's not permanent unless you let it be." As David started to walk away, Marcus called after him. "Why are you doing this?" David paused and turned back. "Because a wise little girl reminded me today that kindness is magic. And because everyone deserves a second chance." After David disappeared into the evening crowd, Marcus sat alone on the bench, staring at the business card in his hands. Part of him wanted to believe it was real, that this stranger's offer might be genuine. But experience had taught him to be suspicious of things that seemed too good to be true. Still, as he tucked the card carefully into his jacket pocket, Marcus felt something he hadn't experienced in months: hope. Part 3. The next morning dawned crisp and clear, with autumn sunlight filtering through the trees of Central Park. Marcus had spent the night in a 24-hour diner in Billionaire, Midtown, nursing a cup of coffee and watching the city wake up through the window. The business card David had given him was creased from being handled so many times, but the information on it was clear. Kim Technologies, with an address in Manhattan's financial district. Marcus had looked up the company on the diner's Wi-Fi, and what he found had left him stunned. Kim Technologies wasn't just any tech company. It was a massive corporation specializing in cloud computing and cybersecurity, with contracts with major corporations and government agencies. And David Kim wasn't just someone who ran the company. He was the founder and CEO, worth billions according to the articles Marcus had read. Now, standing outside the gleaming glass tower that housed Kim Technologies, Marcus felt the familiar weight of inadequacy settling on his shoulders. He had done his best to clean up in the diner's restroom, but there was only so much he could do with his limited resources. His reflection in the building's windows showed a man who clearly didn't belong in this world of power suits and expensive briefcases. The security guard at the front desk looked him up and down with obvious suspicion when Marcus approached. "Can I help you?" "I'm here to see Jennifer," Marcus said, his voice steadier than he felt. "David Kim sent me." The guard's expression shifted slightly at the mention of the CEO's name, but skepticism remained. "Jennifer who?" "I don't know her last name. Mr. Kim just said to ask for Jennifer and tell her he sent me." After a brief phone call during which the guard spoke in low tones while keeping his eyes on Marcus, he hung up and pointed toward the elevators. 32nd floor. Jennifer Martinez will meet you there." The elevator ride to the 32nd floor felt like the longest 30 seconds of Marcus's life. When the doors opened, he found himself in an elegant reception area, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the city. A professional-looking woman in her 30s approached him with a warm smile. "You must be Marcus," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Jennifer Martinez, Director of Human Resources. David mentioned you might be coming by." Marcus shook her hand, acutely aware of his appearance in contrast to her polished professionalism. "He said you might have something for me, but I should probably tell you up front that I don't have a current address, and I'm not sure when I last had a proper shower." Jennifer's smile didn't falter. "Well, we can certainly help with both of those things. David briefed me on your situation, and he was very clear about wanting to help. Why don't we start with getting you cleaned up, and then we can talk about opportunities." She led him through a maze of offices and conference rooms to what appeared to be an executive lounge area, complete with a shower facility and lockers. "We keep emergency supplies here for executives who work through the night or travel extensively," she explained, handing him a bag containing toiletries, a towel, and what looked like new clothes in his approximate size. "Take your time," Jennifer said. "When you're ready, come find me at reception and we'll sit down for a proper conversation." As Marcus stood under the hot water 20 minutes later, washing away months of street grime and despair, he felt tears mixing with the shower spray. He couldn't remember the last time someone had shown him such basic human dignity. The clothes Jennifer had provided were simple but well made: khakis, a button-down shirt, and a sweater that actually fit properly. When he emerged from the lounge, he caught sight of himself in a mirror and was startled by the transformation. Clean-shaven and properly dressed, he looked like someone who might actually belong in this building. Jennifer was waiting for him with 2 cups of coffee and a folder full of papers. "Better?" she asked. "Much. Thank you." They settled into a conference room overlooking the park where Marcus had met David the day before. The irony wasn't lost on him that he was now looking down at the bench where he had been, sitting just 24 hours earlier. "David told me about your background," Jennifer began. "Military IT, cybersecurity experience, and most recently work at a startup that specialized in network infrastructure. Is that accurate?" Marcus nodded. "Though I should mention that was over a year ago, and technology moves fast. I'm probably behind on current protocols and systems. That's not uncommon, and it's easily remedied. What matters more to us is your foundational knowledge and your ability to learn." She slid the folder across the table. "David has asked me to offer you a position as a junior cybersecurity analyst. It comes with full benefits, including health insurance, and we have partnerships with local housing services that can help you get back on your feet." Marcus stared at the papers in the folder, afraid to believe what he was seeing. "This is real? Very real. The starting salary might be less than what you made before, but it includes comprehensive training to bring you up to speed on current systems, and there's clear potential for advancement based on performance." "Why?" Marcus asked. "I mean, David explained a little yesterday, but this seems like an enormous risk for your company to take on someone in my situation." Jennifer leaned back in her chair, considering her answer. "David Kim has built this company on the principle that talent and character matter more than pedigree or circumstances. Some of our best employees have come from unconventional backgrounds. We've hired former inmates, people recovering from addiction, single mothers who'd been out of the workforce for years. What they all had in common was the determination to rebuild their lives and the skills to contribute meaningfully to our mission." She paused, then continued. "David told me about what happened in the park yesterday, about how you interacted with that little girl and how her nanny treated you. He said it reminded him why he started this company in the first place, to create opportunities for people who might not get them elsewhere." Marcus felt his throat tighten again. "I don't know what to say." "Say yes," Jennifer replied with a smile. "And then, let's get you started on changing your life." As Marcus signed the paperwork that would officially make him an employee of Kim Technologies, he thought about Emma Rose and her simple act of sharing her sandwich. He had no way of knowing that her kindness had set in motion a chain of events that would transform not just his own life, but the lives of others in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Meanwhile, across the city in an elegant Upper East Side apartment, Emma Rose was having breakfast with her parents and recounting the previous day's events in the park. Her mother, Charlotte Sullivan, listened with growing concern as Emma described sharing her sandwich with the nice man on the bench and Patricia's angry reaction. "She was really mean to Marcus, Mama," Emma said, her small face scrunched with displeasure. "She said bad things about him even though he was nice to me." Charlotte exchanged glances with her husband, Robert, who was reading the newspaper over his coffee. As the founder of a successful marketing firm, Charlotte was used to reading between the lines, and what she was hearing about their nanny's behavior troubled her deeply. "What exactly did Patricia say, sweetheart?" Charlotte asked gently. Emma recounted the interaction as best she could remember, including Patricia's comments about people like that and her threat to call the police. With each detail, Charlotte's expression grew more serious. "You know what, Emma Rose?" Charlotte said finally. I think you did exactly the right thing by sharing your sandwich. Kindness is always the right choice. But Patricia said I shouldn't talk to strangers. Patricia was right about being careful with strangers, Robert interjected, looking up from his paper. But there's a difference between being careful and being cruel. You showed good judgment, Princess. You saw someone who needed help and you helped them. That afternoon, while Emma was at school, Charlotte had a long conversation with Patricia about the incident in the park. What she learned confirmed her worst fears about the woman they had entrusted with their daughter's care. Children need to learn about the real world, Patricia had said defensively. They can't go around thinking everyone deserves their help. Some people are homeless because they make bad choices. Some people are homeless because of circumstances beyond their control, Charlotte had replied firmly. And regardless of how someone ended up in that situation, they deserve to be treated with basic human dignity. With respect, Mrs. Sullivan, I think you're being naive. People like that man are often dangerous, unstable. Emma could have been hurt. Emma was never in any danger. From what she told me, the man was gentle and respectful, and he tried to refuse her offer of food. If anything, he sounds like he was trying to protect her from exactly the kind of judgment you showed him. The conversation had continued for another 20 minutes, but it became clear that Patricia's views were fundamentally incompatible with the values Charlotte and Robert wanted to instill in their daughter. By the end of the day, Patricia was no longer in their employ. That evening, as Charlotte tucked Emma into bed, her daughter asked the question she had been dreading. "Mama, why did you fire Miss Patricia?" Charlotte sat on the edge of the bed, choosing her words carefully. "Because she and Daddy and I have different ideas about how to treat people. We believe that everyone deserves kindness and respect, no matter what their situation is. Miss Patricia doesn't agree with that. So I was right to share my sandwich? You were absolutely right, baby girl. And I'm proud of you for seeing past what someone looks like to who they really are inside." Emma was quiet for a moment, then asked, "Do you think Marcus found somewhere warm to sleep?" Charlotte's heart clenched at her daughter's continued concern for a stranger she had met for just a few minutes. "I don't know, sweetheart. But I hope so. Can we go back to the park tomorrow? Maybe he'll be there and we can bring him another sandwich." "We can try," Charlotte promised, though she suspected that the man Marcus was probably long gone from that bench by now. What Charlotte didn't know was that at that very moment, Marcus was sitting in a small but clean hotel room that Kim Technologies had arranged for him, looking out at the city lights and marveling at how completely his life had changed in just 24 hours. He was thinking about Emma Rose, too, wondering if he would ever have the chance to thank her properly for the gift she had given him. Neither of them knew that their paths would cross again much sooner than either expected, or that Emma's simple act of kindness would continue to ripple outward in ways that would surprise them all. Part 4. 2 weeks later, Marcus was settling into his new routine at Kim Technologies with a sense of wonder that hadn't yet faded. Each morning, he woke up in a small studio apartment, found with the help of the company's housing services, and marveled at having a bed, a kitchen, and a door he could lock from the inside. The work itself was challenging but invigorating. His military training and previous experience provided a solid foundation, while the comprehensive training program was quickly bringing him up to speed on current cybersecurity protocols. David Kim had made a point of checking in with him personally several times, always asking how he was adjusting and whether he needed anything. The attention from the CEO initially made Marcus uncomfortable. He was used to being invisible, and suddenly being seen felt overwhelming, but David's approach was never condescending or performative. It was clear that he genuinely cared about Marcus's success. "How are you finding the team?" David asked during one of their informal coffee meetings. "They've been great," Marcus replied honestly. "I was worried about fitting in, given my background, but everyone's been welcoming. Good. And the technical aspects? Quote, coming back faster than I expected. It's like riding a bicycle, I suppose. The fundamentals don't change, even if the tools evolve." David nodded approvingly. "Jennifer mentioned you've been staying late, working on some of the more complex firewall configurations. I want to prove that your faith in me wasn't misplaced," Marcus said. "You already have," David replied firmly. "But I appreciate the dedication. Just make sure you're not overdoing it. Work-life balance is important, especially when you're rebuilding your life." As Marcus was leaving the office that evening, Jennifer stopped him in the lobby. Do you have plans for Saturday afternoon? Not particularly. Why? David's company sponsors a children's coding workshop at the community center in Brooklyn. We usually send a few volunteers to help with the kids who are just starting out. Would you be interested in joining us? Marcus considered this. He had always been good with children. His interaction with Emma Rose in the park had reminded him of that, and the idea of giving back appealed to him. What would I be doing? Mostly just helping the younger kids with basic concepts, keeping them engaged, that sort of thing. You don't need to be an expert teacher. Enthusiasm and patience are more important. I'd like that, Marcus said. Count me in. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, but the community center was warm and buzzing with activity when Marcus arrived. About 20 children ranging in age from 6 to 12 sat at laptops, working through simple programming exercises with the help of several volunteers from Kim Technologies. Marcus was assigned to work with the youngest group, children who were just learning the basics of logical thinking that would eventually lead to actual coding. As he knelt down beside a particularly frustrated 6-year-old who couldn't quite grasp the concept of sequential steps, a familiar voice made him look up. Marcus! Standing in the doorway wearing jeans and a bright purple sweater was Emma Rose. Her face lit up with genuine joy as she recognized him, and she immediately started running in his direction. Emma! Marcus stood up, amazed by how happy he was to see her. What are you doing here? Mama signed me up for the computer class, Emma said, throwing her arms around his waist in an enthusiastic hug. I wanted to learn how to make games. Are you teaching here? I'm helping out, Marcus said, glancing around to see if the dreaded Patricia was anywhere in sight. Instead, he saw an elegant woman with Emma's dark hair and kind eyes approaching them. You must be Marcus, the woman said, extending her hand with a warm smile. I'm Charlotte Sullivan, Emma's mother. I've heard so much about you. Marcus shook her hand, confused. You have? Oh, yes. Emma hasn't stopped talking about her friend from the park who she shared her sandwich with. She's been asking me every day if we could go back to look for you. Mama fired Miss Patricia, Emma announced matter-of-factly. She was mean to you, so Mama said she couldn't work for us anymore. Marcus looked at Charlotte in surprise. You fired your nanny because of what happened in the park? Charlotte's expression grew serious. I fired her because her values were incompatible with what my husband and I want to teach our daughter. Emma showed compassion and kindness to someone who needed it, and Patricia responded with cruelty and prejudice. That's not the kind of influence I want around my child. But I'm sure finding a new nanny has been difficult. It has been, Charlotte admitted. But some things are more important than convenience, Emma's character development being one of them. As they talked, Emma had settled herself next to the frustrated 6-year-old Marcus had been helping earlier. Hi, she said to the little boy. I'm Emma. Are you stuck on something? The boy nodded miserably. I can't make the turtle move the right way. That's okay, Emma said cheerfully. My friend Marcus is really good at this stuff. Marcus, can you show Tommy how to make the turtle turn? For the next 2 hours, Marcus found himself working with both Emma and Tommy, along with several other children who gravitated toward the small group. Emma turned out to be a natural at the logical thinking required for programming, but more importantly, she was incredibly patient and encouraging with the younger children who were struggling. Charlotte watched from the sidelines, observing how Marcus interacted with the children. She saw the same gentleness and respect that Emma had described from their first meeting in the park. He never talked down to the kids, never showed frustration when they didn't understand something immediately, and he had a gift for explaining complex concepts in simple terms. When the workshop ended, Charlotte approached Marcus as he was helping to pack up the equipment. Would you like to join us for lunch? She asked. Emma would love to continue catching up with you, and I'd enjoy the chance to talk more myself. Marcus hesitated. Are you sure? I don't want to impose. You wouldn't be imposing, Charlotte assured him. Besides, Emma would never forgive me if I let you get away again without finding out how your story turned out. They ended up at a family-friendly restaurant near the community center, where Emma regaled Marcus with stories about her new school and her latest art projects, while Charlotte asked thoughtful questions about his work at Kim Technologies and his transition off the streets. I have to ask, Charlotte said over dessert, while Emma was distracted by the restaurant's fish tank, how did you end up working for David Kim? That seems like quite a leap from where you were 2 weeks ago. Marcus told her the story of David's appearance in the park and the job offer that had followed. Charlotte listened with growing amazement. "So Emma's sandwich led to you meeting David Kim, which led to your new job and apartment," she summarized. "That's quite a chain of events." "Your daughter changed my life," Marcus said simply. "I don't think she realizes it, but that moment of kindness gave me the first hope I'd felt in months. And it clearly made an impression on David Kim as well." "Emma has always had a gift for seeing people clearly," Charlotte said, watching her daughter try to count the fish in the tank. "Sometimes I think children understand human nature better than adults do." As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Emma tugged on Marcus's sleeve. "Will you come to my birthday party?" she asked. "It's next Saturday, and Mama said I could invite my friends." Marcus looked at Charlotte, who nodded encouragingly. "We'd love to have you there," she said. "Emma's been planning this party for weeks, and I know it would mean a lot to her to have you celebrate with us." "I'd be honored," Marcus replied, and meant it. As they parted ways outside the restaurant, Charlotte handed Marcus her business card. "In case you need anything," she said. "And I mean that. Emma isn't the only one in our family who believes in helping friends." That evening, Marcus sat in his apartment thinking about the unexpected turn his day had taken. Not only had he reconnected with Emma Rose, but he had met her mother and seen firsthand the kind of family that had raised such a compassionate child. Charlotte's decision to fire Patricia rather than tolerate her prejudice spoke volumes about her own character and values. As he was getting ready for bed, his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, but when he answered, he heard David Kim's voice. "Marcus, I heard about your volunteer work today at the community center. Jennifer mentioned you were fantastic with the kids." "It was rewarding," Marcus replied. "Actually, something interesting happened. I ran into Emma Rose, the little girl from the park." There was a pause on the other end. "The one who shared her sandwich with you?" "The very same. Small world, apparently." David chuckled. "Or maybe it's just proof that kindness has a way of coming full circle." Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.